Hello guys. Today I want to show you my IED script, and as a good way of showing this script, I'll show it in the context of a mission which I'm currently creating for Salticide Squad. So what the IED script does is it spawns IEDs dynamically with a low performance overhead, and it works on dedicated servers. What IEDs are improvised explosive devices, which are commonly used in real-world scenarios. So what this map is showing you here is 4 dots, each signifying a potential IED. Because we're in debug mode here, we can see which IED is live. The black ones are just empty objects which do not explode. You also notice that they are spawned on roads. These are not manually placed by me, but they're dynamically selected by the script, which I'll show you shortly. So let me just teleport to the nearest patch of IEDs. Right, so here on this big road, they're fairly obvious, which is one of the reasons I decided to include the idea of decoy IEDs. So these black dots, they are objects which look like IEDs, but they're not explosive. The red dot is. So if we slowly approach one of the IEDs, I believe this is the live one, we'll get an add action to investigate the object, in which we'll find out it's true. Now if we approach this IED too fast, or we step on it, it will detonate. The only way to safely remove these IEDs is to place an explosive charge near to it. I know that a lot of people would have preferred a diffusal script of some kind, but frankly I don't think that's realistic for the mission which I'm designing here. Now let me just demonstrate what happens if you run past the IED too quickly. Right, so let me just show you what goes into the mission files. There's a game logic. In this game logic we have a call which says this and free. So this refers to the game logic. We'll be using the location, and free refers to the number of decoys which will be spawned randomly. And I only have 3 of these game logics on the map at the moment, but throughout the mission development I'll be sure to add many more. So we will begin from a logical perspective. So the script is called from the game logic, which calls the IED spawn ied.script file. So let's have a look in the file. Here we just have a few parameters. The radius, right now it will scan for roads within 50 meters. The road radius, so this is the thickness of the roads. If we were to just not use the thickness of the roads and we spawned it directly onto the road itself, the IED will appear in exactly the same position on every road, which of course breaks immersion. Debug true, this simply shows us the markers in the map. Get game logic, so we're getting the logic which called this script, and did props, the number of props or fake IEDs which will be spawned. In this case, that equals 3. So we have a simple for loop for prop number from 0 to dead props. We will select a prop at random. Now the props are defined in the init.sqf. So each of these is what the IEDs will look like. We can simply add more if we want to. Find array, So let's get the nearest roads to our game logic within the 50 meters specified above. And then we want to select a road segment at random. There may be 10 different road segments in this array. Obviously we can only spawn on one. So get random position on the road. You want the IED to spawn either to the left or the right hand side of the road, which is why I've done 0 and 180 as directions. So we select one of these directions at random, whether to spawn on the left or right hand side of the road. Now we've got the position, we can create our prop. And the first prop will be the live IED. The remaining props will be fake, as in they will not explode. And we set some variables, which will be useful because, as I said earlier, this is supported by dedicated servers. So, is explosive? This one is, so we got true. And we want to broadcast this to all clients. And IED set variable is exploded. False. No, it hasn't exploded yet. And yes, we want to broadcast this as well. And finally, we want to add an event handler to detect whether this IED has been hit by an explosive charge to trigger the explosion. In the event handler, we call the script called IED detonate, with a few parameters which I'll get to when we cover this script. Finally, if the prop is not explosive, we set is explosive variable to false. And we just have the script which creates a marker. So we've created our prop. It's not explosive yet, and we still don't know if the player is near to the IED. So to handle this, what we have is an init player local. So every player will have their own init player local.sqf, which will start when they join the server. So let's just open IED check.sqf. So this script is essentially a loop which will run forever while they're on the server. Undoubtedly there are other ways of doing this, but what this script does is it will check whether the player has approached an IED, and then it checks if the IED is explosive, and then it checks the player's speed, etc., and decides whether to explode the IED. And it also adds the action which the player can use to investigate whether the IED is explosive. Personally, I chose to put this loop on each player instead of every IED object, because I want to take the strain off the server. So this loop will run on the player's computer, and at any one time I can imagine there'll only be about 10-20 people on the server which this script will be using, and undoubtedly there will be more IEDs, so there might be 50 IEDs, so it makes sense to only have 20 loops instead of 50 loops. So every second we get all the IED props which are near the player within 10 meters. Again, IED props are defined in the init.sqf. So with each of these IED props, we want to check some things. So first we want to give it a name. The name will be IED. We don't know if it's explosive yet. Is action added? So actions are local to the player. If I was to add the action to the IED when we spawn the IED, it wouldn't be present on connected players' computers. That's because when the IEDs spawn SQF is started, the mission has just initialized and it's run by the server. And it only runs once. So any players which connect do not see an added action. So instead, this is handled in the player side. So we check if this variable exists. If it doesn't, then we add the action to the IED. And the action is simply investigate object, blah blah blah, is explosive. If it is, then true. If not, then false. And we check if the IED is explosive by getting the variable from the IED. So, if the player is near a object and it is explosive, and if the player is within explosive distance, and player is going over 4 km per hour, or the player is virtually stood on top of the IED, then we detonate the IED via the IED detonate.sqf script. So let's just have a look at the IED detonate script. So in this script we check two things. We check, is this script called by the player being too close, or is it called by the hit event handler which we added when we spawned the IED? So if it is called by the isHit event handler, we first check if the IED is exploded. Because imagine a car driving down the road, they're about to hit the IED, and there are 4 players in the car. Each of them players has a loop which is checking if they're approaching the IED. There's a chance that because both players, or more than one player, will trigger the IED at the same time. So to try and minimize this chance and prevent multiple explosions, each from the local player, there's a variable called isExploded on the IED. So if IED is exploded equals false, then we can go and explode the IED and immediately set the variable to true. So that the next player who goes through this script and checks if it's exploded, they'll get true. Yes, it is. So they'll skip it. So we avoid concurrent explosions through one interaction with an IED, which is preferable. So if it is hit, in other words, if this is called from the event handler hit, then we know that this has been detonated through a controlled explosion of some sort to try and get rid of the IED. So we want to make sure that it's not just a bullet, because a bullet would be too easy. Players would just go around shooting all the IEDs they see. We want to make sure that the damage is substantial, one such caused by an explosion. And if it is substantial, we want to offer 2 types of diffusal. The IED either explodes by creating an explosive vehicle, or the IED just fizzles out and creates a smoke cloud. However, if the detonate script is called because the player got too close to it and was moving too fast, etc., then it's bad time for them. So in this case we always explode and then we delete the IED. And so the IED will be removed from the loop, because every time they search for a new object, that object will not exist anymore. So in a nutshell, that is the IED script. Please feel free to download it from the description below this video. I'll be looking to make new videos on this particular mission as I move through the development process, and the mission will be playable in a few weeks on saltersidesquad.co.uk. I encourage you all to join up if you're interested. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.